Hello and welcome to another episode of Tips from the Top. My name is Rick Barron and I'm here with our co-host
Veronica Sanford.
And today we are interviewing Brent Seelmeyer. Brent is the president of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Cincinnati. His previous work was exclusively in the nonprofit and higher education arena, spending 7 years as the executive director of Cancer Family Care. Previously, he worked several years as director of development at Miami University, where he also served as head coach to the men's lacrosse team. Welcome, Brent. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Would you give us a brief introduction to the size of the organization that you lead for the Boys and Girls Club?
Sure. I'm responsible for leading the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Cincinnati, which includes both Cincinnati, the urban area, and also Northern Kentucky. We have 9 clubs. We serve 7,000 kids plus each year. We have a board of about 30 to 35 trustees, and we have a staff of about 150.
Wow.
And then an army of volunteers that help supplement the programs that we provide.
How many of those are direct reports to you?
I've got 6 direct reports. So that's about the number that I think is appropriate for the size of organization that we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brent, how do you develop leaders?
That's a great question. I think, I try to help develop leaders. I don't think it's one person's sole responsibility, but I think really investing time, both personally and professionally, I try to take the time to really get to know the people that I work with, both on the staff side, but also on the volunteer side. Build and develop relationships with them, invest time, and really invest the resources necessary to bring out the best in those folks. I've found over my nearly 17-year career in doing this work that the vast majority of folks want to do well. They want to succeed. They want to have the path to success shown to them. And then they want you to get the heck out of their way. So I think one of the things that we talk about a lot with my team is avoiding micromanagement, for example. I've worked in an office where I was dealing with a micromanager boss. I just really try to lead by example, make sure that folks have the resources necessary, but then really stay out of their way and just provide support.
So are they given freedom to fail then and to find their own way?
Absolutely. That's another great question. I think, who was it, Babe Ruth, that said, I struck out more times than any other player in history. In order to succeed, you have to fail, and you have to fail multiple times. And that's definitely something I wish I had known earlier in my career.
Thank you.
Brent, the club has a Ready to Serve program where you teach kids character and leadership skills. Mm-hmm. Is there any insights from that program that our viewers might be able to use at home?
Absolutely. I think Ready to Serve is all about teaching young people, particularly those that need us most. And what I mean by that are kids who are really dealing with the depths of poverty, who maybe don't have a lot of role models in their lives. Those kids may not have the financial resources within their family to give back, but they can give back with their time and talent. And so I think servant leadership is the model that I like to espouse, teaching folks to truly serve other people. So with the Ready to Serve piece, we're taking young people out into the community. We're doing things like preparing meals for the homeless, cleaning up, even used heroin needles. I mean, we do that safely, but teaching them how to take better care of their community. And for those out there watching, I think the overall message is that invest time, invest your talent. It's not all about money, and I think that's where a lot of folks kind of get sidetracked and maybe even a little short-sighted. That when you talk about investing in your community, people think about money first, and while that's extremely important, leadership transcends that. And for young people, again, in particular, giving them a sense of a larger community by taking a group of, say, 40 kids and taking them to clean up a section of Over the Rhine, let's say, near downtown. It's amazing to see. I've watched it happen many times. These are young people that often have never been out of their specific neighborhood, and so giving them an opportunity to explore outside of their street or their four walls, it gives them so much hope and, quite frankly, ambition to do more.
There's something that you said about having people volunteer and to help these kids. And I know I had a huge influencer in my life. I was 5 years old, and it was just within a 3-minute period of time that this woman had an impact on me for the rest of my life. And she didn't even know that she had such an impact, but I modeled myself after her. So as a successful leader, what steps have you taken to get where you are?
Well, I try to spend the time, what free time I have, reading books on leadership or character development. I try to spend time attending seminars or even just spending time with a peer group of other executives that I admire and hope to emulate. I think that's something that I've tried to spend a lot of time with over the past several years. I was really blessed. I had an opportunity to attend a top-notch boarding school for high school, and I'll be quite candid, it changed my life, completely changed my life. I was surrounded by very talented people where competition was king. And so if you wanted to thrive and succeed at this school, you really had to bring your A game every single day, all 4 years of high school. And I lived on campus. I had great roommates, great teachers around me, and we also had exposure to some very successful alumni that had graduated from that school that I admired. And so there was a defining moment about 2 weeks before my 18th birthday. I had an opportunity to spend an entire day with Ted Turner, who was at the time married to Jane Fonda, and Ted was an alumnus of our school. And I learned so much in that probably 6-hour period that I spent with them, just about leadership, about vision. This is a man who, when he founded CNN back in, I think it was 82, people thought he was crazy. Who would ever want to watch cable television 24 hours a day? And now look where we are. So that was a really defining moment for me, quite honestly.
Thank you. And can you say the name of the school?
Sure. It's the Macaulay School. It's in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Thank you.
Brent, like Ted Turner, there were probably other influencers in your life or mentors. Anybody else that kind of took you by the hand and helped you up that ladder?
Yes. One that stands out, aside from my loving family, I have an uncle who's passed away now, but an uncle by marriage. He married my aunt. His name was Edward Hidalgo, and he was Secretary of the Navy during the Carter administration, and was really a self-made man. Grew up very poor, Hispanic immigrant in New York City, did very, very well academically, got a tennis scholarship to Holy Cross in Massachusetts, and went on to become a very successful attorney, and he died my sophomore year in college. But before that, I'd spent a lot of time with him every summer for several years. And I'll never forget, about a year before he passed, I was working at a summer job outside of Washington, D.C., and I had a really terrible boss. I think we've all had, at some point in our lives, someone that wasn't a good leader, right? And I got so upset one day at the way I was being treated that I just quit on the spot. I walked out, basically. I told him I quit. And I was living with my aunt and uncle at the time, just for this summer. And I got home, and I'll never forget the lesson learned, the conversation that we had. It almost feels like it just happened yesterday, because I think about it often. And the moral of the story was, you never give up, you never quit, even if you're dealing with a bad leader. It was unacceptable and out of character, in his opinion, that any person would ever leave a job that way, no matter how bad it was. And he basically made me go back the next day and ask for my job back, which was very difficult. I had to swallow my pride. But that lesson was it was one of many that I got from him. But he's been a huge influence in my life. I feel very blessed. Through that relationship, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of senior military leaders. General Carl Mundy, the only Marine in history that rose from an enlisted private to 4-star general, was a good family friend. A lot of lessons there too. So,
Wow.
yeah. My Uncle Ed was a great man.
Wow.
Great man.
And doesn't that show again? That's a great example when you're working with the kids and the volunteers in your group is that you can say, look, I personally know somebody who was Hispanic who, came from nothing, who rose up to
Absolutely.
this, and just change your whole family history and your life and all the people you influence because of that one man.
Yeah.
Quite a hero.
Yeah.
Can you please share some of your golden nuggets of leadership?
Sure. I jotted down a few notes. I think that that good leaders really are adept at telling a story, and what I mean by that is explaining articulately and clearly where we're going, why we're going there, and how we're going to get there. Whether you're running a business or a nonprofit organization or a school or what have you, a church, that fundamental truth for me holds true no matter what. I think good leaders are blessed with the gift of vision, and I think that's something that has come to me quite naturally. I was thinking back, knowing that we were going to be having this conversation, I was thinking back to even my childhood and high school and college years, and I was always viewed by my peers as a leader within our peer group. I don't know if that was innate. I don't know if I just started picking some things up at a young age. I do think those things can be learned, though. But I do think some folks come by it a little more easily than others do. But some other nuggets or maxims, as I call it, are really a good leader should be a mirror of the hopes and dreams of their followers, and in many ways can influence and make those hopes and dreams come true. And one of the things that I think a lot about, I've been in my role with the Boys and Girls Clubs for a little over 2 years, and when I first started working with my team, I realized immediately that I had inherited an organization that was very strong programmatically. We were delivering, and still are, first-class services to these kids, the kids that really need us the most. But we were administratively broken. There had been such a lack of strong leadership from the president's role for years, at least a decade. And now to hear the staff, as I mentioned earlier, we've got about 150 employees. It's a relatively large team. To hear them come back and talk a lot about how excited they are, where we're going, where we're heading as an organization. We're on such an unbelievable growth rate, not only financially, but just in terms of our impact in the community. It's really exciting. It's a good time to be at the Boys and Girls Clubs.
Yay.
Brent, you made an interesting comment about the hopes, dreams, and fears of the people that are in your organization and how leaders are truly makers, help make those.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that seems to be a bit different than most people think. I mean, most people think that these people are here to help the leader facilitate that gift of vision that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain a little bit more about how you really connect with your team and understand their hopes, dreams, and fears and help them realize that?
Sure. I'll go back to what I said earlier about investing the time. There was a gentleman who worked at Procter & Gamble that was a mentor of mine a few years ago. He's since retired and moved to Kansas City, actually. But I remember him talking about something that he would do every morning when he would come into the office. He'd make sure to spend at least 15 to 20 minutes just walking around with his team and just engaging in conversation that wasn't work-related, as kind of an icebreaker, if you will. I make sure to do that. I think there's a lot to be said for not keeping every single conversation work-related. So I think that's a starting point. I don't necessarily disagree that the folks that are the followers, if you will, I don't even like using that word, but the folks that are working with leaders, they play a key role. I mean, it's not a one-person deal. Again, if you're the CEO of Procter & Gamble or any major corporation, it takes a whole army of folks to make your vision reality. But I do think the leader plays an integral role in making those things happen, because at the end of the day, it comes down to responsibility. And I'm very clear with our board of trustees and with our staff that ultimately, at the end of the day, the buck stops at my desk. I'm ultimately the one that's accountable for how we perform. I can't do it without them, and our success is inextricably linked, right? But I'm ultimately the one who's accountable. It's like presidential leadership. I was a political science and psychology major in college, and I've spent a lot of years studying kind of presidential leadership. And I think U.S. presidents get a lot of credit when not necessarily it was something that they directly impacted, but they also get a lot of the blame when things might not be going as well that aren't, again, necessarily under their control. The same holds true for me. But I own that, and I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in your career, looking back, what do you wish you had known 20 years ago?
I wish I'd known that 40 wasn't so old. I'm approaching that birthday very soon, so I just remember when I was younger, I would think that was just so old. No, but in all seriousness, I think I wish I'd known that no matter what project, whether it's a major initiative or even just a smaller weekly project, it's probably always going to take longer than you think it does. And one of my many weaknesses is I'm not a patient man. I'm quite impatient. I learned that from my grandfather. And so I've always been one of those guys that wants to come in and fix everything right away. And even with the work with the Boys and Girls Clubs, there was a sense of that. When I knew that there was, that administratively we needed some work. It took twice as long as I expected it to. So that's probably the thing that comes to mind more than anything.
Thank you.
Sure.
If you're just joining us, you're watching Tips from the Top with our guest, Brent Seelmeyer, the president of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Cincinnati. Brent, prior to the discussion that we're having here on camera, you talked about how you start your one-to-ones with your team, asking them 3 questions. Mm-hmm. What's going well, what's not going well, and what kind of barriers or obstacles can I help you remove? What's the leader's role in helping pave the way and move those obstacles out of the way for his team?
Well, I found, I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to make a point first. I found that if you ask those 3 questions every single time you meet with a staff person one-on-one, with a colleague one-on-one, there's an organic process that happens in the conversation that somehow, some way, you wind up covering everything you've needed to cover, which those 3 simple questions. It's interesting, when I brought that to our team, it's now trickled down within the entire organization. So now a director of operations asks all of his direct reports those 3 questions. Those folks are now, it's kind of funny, and I didn't ask them to do that. They just found it to be such an effective way to manage that they've just started doing that. So, but as far as the role of the leader, I think it's extremely important for a leader to own that role in removing barriers, because oftentimes you might need to make a phone call. There might be a situation where the person on the other end of the phone might not take the call from the other person, but they might take it from you, mm-hmm. and you can remove barriers that way. I think problem solving, 2 heads are always better than 1. I know that's so cliche, but it's so true. And it really fundamentally comes down to communication. Oftentimes, the leader, the manager, might not be aware of the obstacles in the first place, and until they've asked that question, they won't even be aware that there's an opportunity to help. So it just works. It really just works, and I'm thankful. That wasn't an original thought by me. I learned that from someone else, but I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was simple, and oftentimes the best ideas are the simplest.
What's your vision for the future of your team?
Oh, we've got so far to go. I see that we've scratched just the tip of the iceberg in terms of potential with our organization. Right now, as I mentioned earlier, we're serving about 7,000 kids. Unfortunately, we live in a region that has, I think it's the third highest childhood poverty rate in America.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. 53% of our kids in Cincinnati live in poverty, more than do not. So my vision is, in the short term, is that we're able to make an even deeper impact and combat that. I definitely believe that our programs, particularly as we focus on academic success, healthy lifestyles, and good citizenship and character, what we call graduate fit for life, ready to serve, is the antidote to that. I think when you get them while they're young, give them the path, give them the intestinal fortitude to reach higher and to climb that ladder. I just think that my vision, not to ramble, but my vision is that we will continue on this path of growth. We have finally solved our fiscal problems, if you will. We're a stable organization financially, and that's taken a lot of work. The community has responded so positively to our outcomes. I'll give you just one simple example. In the schools that we serve, the neighborhoods that we serve, they're really the toughest neighborhoods in our region. We're looking at high school graduation rates that hover around 50%. We're seeing a 92% graduation rate with our kids. That's really moving the dial significantly. And obviously, with any job, whether they went to college or not, I guarantee you they got a high school diploma first. They walked across that stage and got their diploma first. So that's kind of step one. So my vision is that we'll continue to grow, that our team will continue to gel and form, and we'll continue to be able to attract and retain the brightest staff members possible, and that Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky will no longer be a region that has, unfortunately, one of the highest childhood poverty rates in America.
Yeah. And I think at the beginning of the show you were telling us you've got some news.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I'm excited to share with you all, and this is certainly going to be news to all your viewers out there, is we're bringing our 10th Boys and Girls Club to Anderson Township at Mercer Elementary. So currently we're in 3 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and this will be our 4th elementary school. Plus, we've got our 5 freestanding bricks and mortar clubs that are the traditional sites that people often think of. So we'll now be at 10 sites within the next next month, I should say. It's very exciting. There's certainly a need there that a lot of folks are not necessarily aware of, and it's very exciting. It's very exciting.
It is exciting, yeah. Growth is always good.
It is. It is. I once heard a great story about Coca-Cola. You know, every business is a growth business, and you know, the fact that Coca-Cola remains the world's most known brand in the beverage business didn't stop them from going with Dasani. Didn't stop them with going with Powerade, for example. And you know, I think about that example only in the sense of, well, that makes sense. There are always new markets to enter. In my business, new communities that need boys and girls clubs, that need a safe, positive place where great futures can start for those kids.
Brent, you serve in leadership roles in a number of additional organizations. As president of the Leadership Council for Human Service Executives, a board member of the United Way of Greater Cincinnati, a trustee for the Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park, and on the advisory board member for WCPO Channel 9. I mean, short of the fact that you probably don't have any free evenings, do you have any insights for our viewers who might be interested in serving in those similar kinds of roles in the community?
Sure, yeah. I think this is going to sound maybe overly simplistic, but I really believe that at the end of the day, it's about building relationships. And I've been fortunate in my career, despite the fact that I'm relatively young, to have built those relationships and I think to have proven to be an effective leader. I was thinking on the way over here, I've probably raised close to $100 million in my career personally. And I'm proud of that fact, because those are dollars that truly have transformed the communities in which I've worked and made them better places to live, work, and play. All of those organizations that you just mentioned are organizations that I'm particularly passionate about, and they all serve our community to make it stronger. So for those viewers out there that are wondering how to get involved, I think starting with volunteering and building relationships with the staff of those organizations is probably the simplest way to get started. And if you build effective relationships and prove to bring value to the table, then people are gonna flock to you, and they're gonna want to get you involved. And it's a lot of fun. I truly love what I do. It doesn't feel like work. I mean, some days it does, of course, but I get up every day raring to go, excited to work for these kids. And many of them won't have the opportunity to thank the people that make it happen personally. And so I view that as part of my job, is to be their ambassador and to tell the people in the community how grateful these kids are. We're saving lives. I mean, we actually had a Harris study done recently. 57% of our alumni actually stated that the clubs saved their lives. It's not just about graduating with a plan for their future and becoming valuable, productive members of our community. We're literally saving lives, and I can't think of a cause that's any more noble.
That's very powerful.
Thank you.
Our last question is, do you have anything to ask for our TV audience?
Oh, absolutely. I encourage everyone out there watching to get involved, to invest your time, your talent, and your treasure, particularly in our youth. I think youth are the future, whether it's with Boys and Girls Clubs or another wonderful organization. There are many great causes out there, and I particularly encourage people to get involved with young people. Folks did that for me when I was growing up. I lived in a very small town, a rural town in Tennessee. That's where I grew up. A lot of poverty. And I was blessed in that people took the time to invest in me as a young person, and it's just truly transformational.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Brent, for sharing your insights on leadership with us on Tips for the Top. My name's Rick Barron, and I'm here with my co-host,
Veronica Sanford.
Please join us again very soon for another episode of Tips from the Top.